I'm Grace Cowell.
And I'm Grace Curtis.
And you're watching G2 News.
Lights. Camera.
Action! On January 8th of this year, hundreds of protesters and rioters stormed the capital of Brazil. Thousands of dollars worth of art, furniture, and personal belongings were destroyed in the insurrection.
The mob attacked the Supreme Federal Court, the National Congress Building, and the Residential Palace in the Three Powers Plaza. It took several hours for authorities to get the mob under control after countless acts of brutal vandalism had been committed.
This conflict was sparked by the recent inauguration of Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Silva, a strong Democratic politician, was officially elected in 2023 after a very close race against former President Jair Bolsonaro on January 1st.
Bolsonaro served for 27 years as a congressman. Bolsonaro is known for his national conservatism. After the inauguration, it was suspected by conservative supporters that the election had been tampered with and Bolsonaro was the true president. Shortly after the election, Bolsonaro's supporters began camping outside the Brazilian capital in protest.
The protesters began their walk to the capital around 2 p.m. on the 8th. Police were present to oversee the event, but the amount of protesters was nearly double than expected. By 3 p.m., protesters had broken through barricades and the police began to pepper spray the crowds.
Within the hour, protesters made it onto the roof of the National Congress Building, while others began destroying the inside of the building. Authorities did not control the situation until around 7 p.m. after releasing pepper spray from helicopters, bringing hundreds of personnel in and making hundreds of arrests.
At the end of the day, Bolsonaro addressed the event by saying, quote, "Peaceful demonstrations respecting the law are part of democracy. However, depredations and invasions escape the rule," end quote.
Several officers were injured in the process of controlling the situation. As of 2 weeks ago, there have been over 1,500 arrests. The camps that were previously set up by Bolsonaro supporters have been called to be removed by Brazilian authority. In Memphis, Tennessee, on the evening of January 7th, 29-year-old Tyre Nichols was pulled over for reckless driving. This traffic stop would result in 2 physical confrontations with police that would ultimately cause Nichols' death.
The original police report did not provide much detail about the situation, only claiming that, quote, "a confrontation occurred," and later, quote, "the suspect complained of shortness of breath," end quote.
Officers then reported Nichols was transferred to St. Francis Hospital in critical condition. 3 days later, Tyre Nichols died after he, quote, "suffered extensive bleeding caused by a severe beating," end quote.
On Friday, January 27th, the body cam footage of the officers involved, as well as security footage from nearby buildings, was released to the public. This footage had been shown to Nichols' family the previous Monday.
The footage depicts the true nature of the confrontation between the police officers and Tyre Nichols, calling out discrepancies between the officers' report and what fully occurred.
In this series of videos, Tyre is shown being struck and restrained by officers before attempting to escape by foot. He was then caught once again, where officers proceeded to pepper spray, punch, and kick and restrain him. Later in the video, Nichols can be seen struggling to sit up.
5 officers involved were fired following the incident and have now all been charged with second-degree murder for the death of Tyre Nichols.
The release of this footage has caused further anger over Nichols' death, as it not only reveals the aggressive action taken by the police officers, but also sparks questions about medical response, as it took medics a while to actively assist Nichols.
In response to Tyre Nichols' death, protests have erupted in major cities around the country. Prior to the release of the footage, cities prepared for these protests, which have remained mostly peaceful, with some roads in other areas in these cities being blocked.
Nichols' family has urged protesters to remain peaceful. His mother is quoted saying, "I don't want us burning up cities, tearing up our streets, because that's not what my son stood for." In local news, on Wednesday, January 18th, Governor Wes Moore was inaugurated, becoming Maryland's first black governor and the 3rd elected in the nation. His lieutenant governor, Aruna Miller, is also making history as the first woman of color and immigrant to hold the position.
The ceremony, which was held at the State House in Annapolis, hosted big names, such as Oprah Winfrey, who introduced Moore. Severna Park teen Perjita Bastola, who was discussed in our last episode, was invited to sing the national anthem at the start of the inauguration.
In his inaugural address, Moore spoke about areas he hopes to help progress during his term as governor. Some of the topics he hopes to promote are equal health care, better education, the suppression of climate change, and the end of violent crime in the state.
Moore also touched on a variety of economic issues he plans to work to correct, including boosting the minimum wage, ending the large racial wage gap that exists in Maryland, and overall growing the state's economy.
Wes Moore will now serve as Maryland's governor for the next 4 years, until the next election in 2026. When that time comes, Moore will be able to face re-election and will potentially serve another 4-year term. Thank you for joining us for the January episode of G2 News.
Our sources are linked in our description box below, and as always, we encourage you to research these topics and more.
Our social media accounts are also linked in the description box below, so we encourage you to go check those out to stay up to date with our project. Bye!